we felt very much like it was up to us to represent our generation and to bring a new approach and a new thinking that matched very much with the now Prime Minister and her vision for what Barbados could be. And we bonded over that common ideology, slowly. But we also had and continue to have a lot in common, sharing a border in Britain's Hill and having a lot of the same community issues that we have to address, and feeling very much like our working class backgrounds mean that we have an added responsibility to the people of St. Michael's South Central and the people of St. Michael's South to make sure that their lives are better for us being here. And so Kirk and I are partners in many ways, politically. And we really see this as one St. Michael community that we have the pleasure and the honor of representing and of helping to make change within. Kurt has an extensive background and experience in development work, in social policy, and is always able to bring that kind of insight and that kind of analysis and that kind of rigor to not just what we do in cabinet and in parliament, but what is done on behalf of the people who have brought us here at the community level. So I'm sure he has a lot of exciting things to share with us, and I would like you to join me in welcoming Kurt Humphrey, Member of Parliament, St. Michael's South.
Say I don't need that. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for those very kind remarks, Minister. It's a pleasure to call you Minister every time. First of all, let me also say that it is my privilege to be in this hall again. As Marcia said, I was schooled here, as well as Marcia's sister, Miss Cattle, very, very nice girl, Gail, who became my head girl. And on the wall, if you look to your, maybe your right or your left, depending on where you are, but to your right, the wall is adorned with the persons who did extremely well in their CSCs. And you will see Gail Cattle. You surely won't see Kurt Humphrey. That is why you have to believe in the spirit of redemption and that people can redeem themselves later in life. Yes? But anyways, it's good to be here. It's also good to be here because the last time I was really in this school, we were over on the other side, on the basketball court. And at that time we made the position that we wanted Marcia for this constituency because we knew she was hardworking and we knew she was brilliant. And that I hope over time you've come to see that she is indeed extremely hardworking, and we all know that she's brilliant. And that what she brings to the cabinet and to the government of Barbados, none of us could do now what Marcia Cattle is doing. I think you need to give your MP for that just a round of applause. And it's also my pleasure to be here because, as Marcia said, ideologically we are pretty much the same. We see the world the same way, in the sense that people have to be given the opportunity to make better for themselves, and that the role of government must be to allow people to do that. And that there was a speech that Owen Arthur gave many years ago, I think it was 2007, when he had come back from Mauritius. And it has stuck with me. But in that speech he said that the one thing that was clear to him is that developing countries are on their own. The idea that somebody is coming to save us, those days are done. And that we now have to do what we have to do. Unfortunately, the following year, we were out of government. The people of Barbados determined they wanted a different government, fair enough. But that we didn't have the chance as a Labour Party government to do the things that we felt we would have had to do to make right a situation that would allow future generations of Barbadians to prosper. And what we saw in the intervening 10 years was nothing more than a bunch of menaces parading about as ministers of government, destroying all that we had done as a country, not just the Barbados Labour Party. I'm not being political now. Not just the BLP government, but also what the BLP government had done too. And all that was good about Barbados, in 10 years, those men determined through hell or high water to ruin. And now, because the Labour Party has come in at a very difficult time, and are now making very difficult decisions, the men that brought the country to its knees now have a lot to say. And you know, for me, well, everybody's entitled to speak because Barbados is as free a country as they come. I really feel to go ban the men that should shut up. They should shut up. And I remember, and I know Marcia knows, we were in the house at the time, and we were getting ready to have a conversation on, I think the Prime Minister then, the Prime Minister would have been opposition leader then, but she was responding to the budget. And the nuisance who was in Sentimental South Central, Richard Seeley, in his, after the Prime Minister spoke, because he had a tendency to fly up every time Mia spoke, he wanted to be the first after Mia, so he could prove to the world he knew nothing. But he flew up after Mia spoke. And his first words to the Prime Minister, Mia then at the time, she said that the central bank kept printing money, and the idiot said, but what do you expect the central bank to do? They made there to print money. Now that was the Minister of Tourism, and our future was entrusted to him. And he also got to act as Prime Minister. So we knew from a long time ago that Richard was a clown. And I'm being very serious because it bothers me now that people are actually comparing Marcia and Richard. Richard began by saying the central bank job is to print money. So what do you expect? Richard, what do you expect him to do? He's got to print money. Because he's clueless. And now we have in the minister somebody who understands economics, who is willing to put her talent, her training, and her expertise to the service of this country, so that we know we have a lot more to do in our central bank. And so I feel that when I talk about Marcia, that I feel like you did a disservice today even mentioning this. I really do. Because when I think about what Owenarka said when he was leaving government in 2007, that the country, Barbados and other small island developing states, are basically on their own. And that the message that was given to all the heads of government there and then was that you got to go back and handle your own business. And so, the Democratic Party assumed the government of Barbados run the country. So now we've been in for a very short space of time. By all standards, this is not a long time. And we had a country that was in reverse. Now, even the best driving knows. But if your car is in reverse, you can't suddenly throw it into first or second gear and expect to go forward. You'll match up the gearbox. You know that. So you have a country that is in reverse, you got to slow it down a little bit. You got to stop the bleeding a lot. You got to get the system working again. And then you're going to move forward. So we have now to do basically what we have to do. We have to stop the bleeding. The country is in reverse. We have to get the country out of reverse. We have to do what we have to do and get the country moving again. But in a short space of time. And you know, one of the things I said to the Prime Minister recently is that perhaps the Labour Party is making what is very, very difficult look a little bit too easy. What we are doing perhaps looks a little bit too easy. Because the state of the country was in such a way as to be challenging the most competent of people. But that in a few short months, the Labour Party has been able to reverse many of the negatives facing this country and restored Barbados' reputation back through the leadership of Mia Motley. And that, my friends, was not an easy task. And there is still, of course, a lot of work to be done. Of course. But do we have the commitment to do it? Of course. Do we care enough to do it? Of course. And do we have the courage to do it? I just borrowed all of Marcia's C's. Care, commitment, courage. But we must have care, commitment, and courage as we face these things. Now I know that it is going to be a very difficult period for those of us who support the Barbados Labour Party. We came into office and we made a promise that we were going to make things better for you. And of course, in the first few months, having made some very difficult decisions, nobody wants to send home anybody. But the Democratic Party should also tell you that they sent home 3,000 to 4,000 people and brought back in the same amount of people. And that in public service, and I've been a public servant, and I'm as loyal to the public service and to public servants as anybody could be. But that the public service was overstaffed. And that men would tell you they would go to work with nothing to do. And that we said we were going to try to trim the service, but we told Barbadians to be able to do something else, to make the country fit for purpose. But of course, just because we are in the process of doing this and transition, it doesn't make me feel good, it doesn't make Marshall feel good, it doesn't make the Prime Minister feel good. But at the end of the day, we had to send home a few people lost their jobs. And trust me, I think about it all the time. And as I walk through St. Michael's South, I'm sure I walk through South Central, there are people who would have worked for you, canvassed for you, believed in you, and now they find themselves without work. And how do you look that man in the eye and say to him, at the end of the day, I'm sorry that you lost your job even though you supported you? It's a difficult thing to do. But the good thing about Barbadians, and what the Democratic Party never understood, is that there is an integrity, a decency, and an honesty in Barbadians. And if you level with Barbadians, they will go with you. So the very same people that have lost jobs in my constituency, and I'm sure here and across the country, have said to us, yes, we understand. We know that it has been a difficult time for the government, but we understand. We are willing to work with you. And so all through this process, you'll hear us having conversations with the people, talking about the things that we are doing, being as transparent, as open, and as honest as we can be, telling the people the truth of the reality that is before us. And when we say we had to do some things, we say so honestly. And when we ask for your support, he asks us so honestly. But I tell you that it's only been now 9-10 months, and that I promise you things are going to get better. Things are going to get a lot better. But at some point, the bottom was going to fall out. The way the country was being governed in the last 10 years, the bottom was going to fall out. And we had to come in and to make better for the people of this country. You know, it's never easy. It never is. I have, as you all know, responsibility for a sector that was undertreated. Some would have said it was underperforming. I believe it is because it was not given the necessary attention to perform. You could look at Barbados in all kinds of ways, pick all kinds of things, and you will see the same thing. I have a strong feeling that what you saw in terms of the economy, because we drove it so much during the election, that if you were to pick apart our society in much the same way and analyze it, you would see our social fabric was compromised in much the same way. You would see there were holes being torn in the fabric of this country in much the same way, because nobody was paying attention to the very people on whose shoulders Barbados every single day is being carried. Every single day. And I made a point a few years ago, I wrote an article in which I argued that we have now to reposition the government in terms of our delivery of social services. I will talk to you about the fish markets and stuff in a minute, but I feel this is important. May I have the water, please? I wrote an article while I was in government on whether the government could be involved in building social capital. Like, what is the role of the state in helping Barbados get back to where it used to be? Because the truth is, we don't have the same amount of community groups that we used to have. We don't have the same amount of sporting groups that we used to have. In many cases, a lot of the community groups, or the neighborhood watches and so on, aren't functioning. The PTAs, the same people show up. Most of the parents don't come. It's been a difficult time. And I wrote an article in which I was arguing, can we reposition the government to be able to help fill this gap? And what must now be the role of the government in terms of helping us rebuild our social capital? I do not believe, and it's funny because I was head of the constituency councils, but that's another story for another time. But I do not believe that the government can be all things to all people. but you have to reposition the government to be able to better serve the very same people. What do I mean? Now, I do not have, there was a time when the Bayland was a powerhouse, Marshall. Carrington Village was a powerhouse, Brinsill, football and in sports and so on. Now Notre Dame is struggling. I know, and boy here is follow football. You do? Well, let's not talk about Notre Dame, but Notre Dame is struggling. And a lot of other sporting. When I grew up in the Pinelands was a powerhouse, and now Pinelands is struggling. And a lot of these sporting teams can hardly attract young people now, because young people have all kinds of other attractions that give them much faster returns, or so they think. They're happier to be there, and so on. They get a certain amount of love, they say, on the block that they're not getting in the homes. And I must say, too, as I say to my branch, we must be the most welcoming place for young people. Young people, when a young person makes an effort to join a political branch, the worst thing we can do to those young people, as happens sometimes in some branches and in the political party, is to make them feel as if they are in the wrong place and that they don't know anything. And because you know the history of the Barbados Labour Party, you are somehow 100 times better than this young person who is taking a chance on you. And all that you have done is serve to separate a man from some aspiration that someday he too might be able to serve his country. It is one of the worst things that we do, those of us who serve in political parties. It's true. When you see a young person trying to make a little bit or speak a little bit, maybe they're not speaking as well as you would like. But the truth is they're speaking the language of the street and the language that they know and the language that other people know, young people know, and they can bring more young people to political branches. We must do more to encourage young people to be part of the positive social institutions that define Barbados. And if you can't do it at the political level, then don't complain when they're not doing it at the sporting level and the cultural level, because you all in this room should know better. And you should know when you see a young person to offer them some encouragement and so on, because that's what we're going to need to rebuild the political party, but also the country. When I became president of my branch, when I was in St. Michael's Southeast, I was a fairly young president at the time, and thankfully I had people around me, St. Tomia and Barbara, you all know St. Tomia and Barbara from the Plain, who supported me. They're difficult people, don't get it wrong. They're tough women. You make a mistake, they let you know. You show a sign of arrogance, they let you know. But that they supported you. And that is why I'm saying to this branch, you also have to support the young people who are now coming into the branch. But how can a government help rebuild some of this social capital? Now, I don't think that we have to go and try to be everything to everybody. But if in your constituency you started with one sporting group, you know you want to have 5 or 6 or 7. How do you help these sporting groups to form around an idea? What is the nature of the problem that perhaps a community group organized by the community itself could help you solve? Because the truth is, in St. Michael's South, it's impossible for Marshall and South Central to, first of all, to attend to every issue, and surely to try to resolve every issue. That is why we need to have more sporting groups coming up, more community groups coming up. And the government's role is not to be those, but to facilitate them and to make sure that they happen so that we can start to reverse. It bothers me, I see and you see the crime in Barbados. The gun violence in Barbados. I must tell you, this is not new, but the amount of murders that we're seeing in this first 2 months, 3 months is unprecedented. But the truth is, guns started creeping into Barbados now for a while. I have seen guns at parties. It's fact. If you go to certain fests, you will see men brandishing weapons. They left. But you will see it, they started creeping in. Over the last few years, do we have to do something about it? Yes. Do we need to have tough police force to policing? Yes. Do we need stronger community policing? Yes. But beyond that, we need a stronger community first. You've got to find something for young people to be able to do. And I said when I became the minister, because I don't feel the government can be all things to all people. I don't. But my ministry is responsible for fisheries, for the port, for the markets, for fleshing out a new blue economy, for shipping, and those kind of things. And I know, for example, that where we stand in the fishing sector is not where we want to be standing. And I know that unless we do something for the fishermen, because the Democratic Labour Party like to pretend that they care about people, but you have to look at the lives of people in the last 10 years. And if you had a baseline where people were living in 2007, 2008, and how they were living in 2018 when the Democratic Labour Party lost office, that 10-year period, you would see that most people's standard of living fell significantly in the 10 years. And that perhaps the government started printing money in an effort to prop up a failing economy, but that's an artificial kind of thing. It cannot last. It cannot last, and the bottom was going to fall out. And I visit the markets, and I talk about it all the time because to me it is so sinful. If you were to visit any of the fish markets, you would see the state of them all. And I talk about the countertops which we have to change, but if you look at where the boats come in, first of all, I made the position very clear that the markets and where the boats come in now can't stay the way they are. The people who have boats there, but that the boats have been there parked for 10 years and for 12 years, some for 15 years, just there falling apart. I said, no, you got to clean up the market. You got to clean up these boats. These boats have to move. And so in many of these cases now, you will see a lot of boats are being removed and other people are now being able to have access to the space. I don't want to terrorize anybody's life, but if you are not using the space, what could there? Let somebody who is fishing or in need of the space use the space, because everybody has to eat. Everybody got to eat the food. But even if you look at the fish markets now, if you go to Bridgetown, along the sides where the boats are, they call it fendering, where you put something to prevent the boats from being destroyed. Now you know the fendering in Bridgetown is falling to pieces. This is the government, the former government, how much they loved poor people and how much they love the fishing industry. But if you look where the men have to park their boats, all of the fendering falling to pieces. As a matter of fact, they would tell you that they couldn't get the former minister to come in the markets, period, because he was better than that. You understand? He was better than that, or so he thought. But the fendering where the markets, where the boats have to come in now, fall into pieces. The machines for the ice working off and on. I mean, conditions that you would know that if somebody cares for you, they would never let them obtain. But yet they would want to come and say they care about people, and that predominantly they care about poor people, and poor people suffering every day under the Democratic Labour Party. So we came in and now we're trying to fix it. So I've gone through the estimates, our budget, and I must tell you, I presume Marsha will mention it, but you might have seen that we've changed up the way we now do estimates, and you have to sit in the well of Parliament and talk. Big man, you better know your ministry. You better know what plans and programs you have. You better know what you plan to do for people, because you know sometimes the public servants, and we have a really good cadre of public servants, so they may prepare your estimates as a minister in the past, and then you get to go along on a bite. Nobody ain't ask you nothing, but now you got to know your estimates, and you got to know your public servants too. But now you have to go there and defend what you're doing. So you would have seen in the past the good public servants asking time and time again for a little money to be able to improve the conditions, and being denied over and over and over again. Being denied to do the fundamental things that would transform that industry, that sector, but they finding money to do all kinds of things, like giving away big fat contracts in the port without a tender, without any kind of public procurement practices. They finding ways to give people contracts. They're inviting global ports to come and manage the port for next skin to nothing. For next skin to nothing. Selling up your birthright for nothing. But they can find a couple $100,000 to take care of the vending in the market. Allow the vendors, the fishermen to be able to properly park their boats. They couldn't find any money, and they tell you this because all now today, I know I left people in the market just now doing some work. So I'm talking about it because they're making it right. They couldn't find money to fix the jetties, and the jetties saw all kinds of pieces of wood falling out. The lighting in the place where they got to deal with the boats, they can't get water. All kinds of things. And the reason is because they want you to believe that they can come and mama guide you with all kind of big fancy talk, because Barbadians must ain't got no sense, while at the same time they are figuratively and literally getting fat while the rest of us were suffering. It's a fact. So you could walk through the fish markets, any of them, and see the state. But when we go back to the people in the next 5 years, you walk through by then and see the state then, and you will see that this is a government that cares about people, because we are making wrong things right. And you know, there was a professor at UWI who said, I ain't gonna be frustrated because, you know, the ministry ain't got no money, which is true. That part, we don't have any money. But Marsha is responsible for investments. Minister Cattle is responsible for investments, for attracting large sums of money to this country. And I must tell you, Marsha has attracted large sums of money to this country. That's a fact. And while the government may not have the resources to do it, Marsha brought the resources to do it. So a lot of the things that we have to do in fisheries will be done because of the work Marsha has done, and we will be able to transform the whole of the country together. And why I'm making that point, let me tell you, you would have seen, and people took it lightly and they couldn't understand it. You would see Eswick say he ain't going before Chris when Chris was Minister of Finance. This body can't call me because governments could work so. This kind of minister on minister violence. You could determine now, because you are who you are, you've been dealing with so and so, and expect a country to run. But if you want the government to run, you have to sit down like mature men and women and deal with your people. Now the truth is, the Labour parties get along. I have no problem whatsoever sitting with Minister Cattle and asking her to help us out in certain things. Because we know that you have to put your country before your ego, and put your country before your personal needs and your aspirations. And that is what they did not understand. And because they did not understand it and started acting like boys, playing with big, big toys, they brought the country to a perilous, perilous position. How can you determine you are not going to sit with the Minister of Finance? How? And it wasn't only Eswick. Eswick was the only one who said it in the paper. But I know Lowe tell himself he ain't going neither. And Lowe didn't used to get the estimates either. So how do you run a country? How do you run a country like that? And you see the vast and drastic difference between this party and that party, this government and that government. It's not only that we respect one another, but we understand leadership. Leadership. If you cannot mobilize people to deal with very challenging issues, then you're not leading. And the Democratic Labour Party hadn't led for a long, long time. In front of Stuart never led. Ever. And yeah, I know, we all know he said he was sleeping. He was a sleeping giant. He was a big day race horse. All kinds of things. And I don't even talk about Frandl anymore. I don't. Because the truth is, the people made their determination. I am thankful to the people. Most of them, or many of my people are here from St. Michael South, who determined that they would go with me. But the truth is, the difference is in leadership. And we have in Miss Motley a first-class leader. Bar none. And I complain a lot because, let me tell you, Mia is a workhorse. I'm telling you. But you know why I say I can't complain too much? Because the Prime Minister works harder than any of us. Any of us. By far. So I want to say in the morning, sometimes, Prime Minister, I am so tired. You know, we were up late. But she was up late too. And she was up earlier than the rest of us. Working harder than all of us. She is a true and genuine leader. And I know you see it. I know CARICOM sees it. And I know the rest of the world is seeing it. And every time we travel, we hear it. And as I close, I mean, there are many things I could tell you, but we will talk again if Marsha invites me back. But there are many things I could tell you, but every time I travel, I hear the same thing. I was in Jamaica a few days ago. The flight was delayed by 9 hours. I was exhausted, whatever. But I sat at the airport with a representative, a minister from Dominica, a minister from Antigua. This is a true story. A minister from Antigua, one from the Bahamas, and a minister from St. Lucia. And we were talking, and each and every one, saying how much they respect Mia Mottley, how much they like Mia Mottley, and the difference that Mia Mottley's leadership is making to this Caribbean nation. So look, I know it is tough. These are tough times. But I have faith in you, and I know you have faith in us, and that together we will find our way out of this mess that the Democratic Labour Party put us in. I am confident that we will find our way out of the mess that the Democratic Labour Party has put us in. And so I ask my people all the time, I sit here, I tell them, you know, we're a little busy. We got to work 6-7 days a week, all day long. But I say to my people, I may not be able to knock on as many doors as I used to, but go and knock on some doors for me. Marsha may not tell y'all, but go and knock on some doors for Marsha. And when you hear people saying, man, we don't see them as much, but we're here working for you. Give us a chance. Let us stabilize the country. Give her a chance. Because Marsha is doing very, very, very important work. And none of us could do what Marsha Cattle is doing. So I want to thank you all for coming out and for hearing us. I want to thank you for staying this very difficult road with us. We've only been in now for less than a year, and you can see, you can feel the things that we have done. You can feel in your spirit the transformation that is occurring in this country. You can feel it. Yet there are people who would want to tell you that what you're feeling ain't true. You don't know what you're feeling. And you don't know what you're seeing. These people who are paid to go on the call-in programs to say all manner of evil, all manner of evil against us. Look, pay them no mind exactly. I know what you have in Marsha Cattle. You know what you have in Marsha Cattle. Stay the course and allow us with Marsha Cattle and with Mia Mottley to bring us to safety. Thank you very much.
I'm not as tall as Minister Humphrey is. We wish to sincerely thank Minister Humphrey for his passionate and thought-provoking remarks this afternoon. A very sobering reflection for all of us, comrades of this great party, that we are the foot soldiers that have to go out into the villages and into the streets of our country and continue to spread the good word of the Barbados Labour Party and what we are doing. Because people are very, very quick to focus on the negative, but there's a lot of positive happening. And it is our duty as members of this party, even when our ministers are busy doing the work for us, it is our duty to continue to go out there and to remind people of where we were, where we are, and where we are going under the capable leadership of our Prime Minister and her extremely talented cabinet. With those few remarks, I now wish to welcome our Member of Parliament, the Minister of Economic Affairs and Investment, the Honourable Marsha Cattle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And thanks to, I have to get used to saying Minister Humphrey in scenarios like this, because this brings us right back to to those years of walking together and talking to people about what they were going through, and being here now and having to get our hands on the substance of what we talked about. It is almost surreal, but it is fulfilling, because now we get to move beyond talk and to action. Before I get into some of the constituency update and to talk a bit about some of the issues that we're facing, I want to acknowledge my father in the audience. That is that. And let people see you. He's a little bit shorter than me, but you see the resemblance. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Leonard Alsop, who is over there in the room, one of the stalwarts of the Barbados Labour Party and of this branch. And Mr. Alsop does not miss a cockfight. And we thank you for always making the effort to come out. At the end, we are going to acknowledge some of the members of our branch who we could do none of this without. But I want to talk a bit about what we've been working on along with the branch over the last few weeks and months, and really to start out by making it a plea for those of you in this constituency who want to see things done and want to see things done quickly, to join us so that they can be done. As I sit here, I'm looking towards the back of the room, Kathy, Simone, Sophie, looking in the corner here, Mona. I know that they want me to make this plea, because as hard as we are working in Parliament and in Cabinet, they're working as hard in the constituency. When I was canvassing one day in Carrington Village, a young lady came out the house and said to me, you have my support, but I want to ask you something. She said, when you get in, right, you are going to be real busy, because I know about you. That's what she said. She said, I know about you. I know your background. And I know that you are going to have to help fix this economy, and you ain't going to got no time. So I want to know if you got people across there in that office that when I need help or when I have something to say, that I can be able to go and find somebody to talk to and to be able to understand the issues that we have in this constituency and to get some things done. And I thought it was such an honest perspective. And it was such a realistic perspective that you can't quarrel with. But as Kirk said in his remarks earlier, we do need the critical mass. And it's not just about the branch, and it's not just about the Barbados Labour Party, although it is about that, because, I kid you not, 2023, look far, very far. And, you know, the reason, as Kirk was taking his seat again, he whispered to me, you know, I always have to talk about the Democratic Labour Party and what they have done, because we cannot get back here again. We cannot forget what the failure of an entire government and the almost failure of an entire country looks like. We almost got there. And so while there are people who say, well, why are y'all looking back? Forget about the past. We have to remember. Yes, we have to remind ourselves of where we will not take this country again. But we also need to galvanize our communities. It is not just about our success as a Barbados Labour Party, but it is about the success of our communities. And the fact that we need the involvement of people in order to make sure that this Barbados that we love does not get back to that place that we almost did not recognize not too long ago. We've been working hard at the constituency level and trying to make sure that we do not lose touch with the issues and the people and what people are going through. You know, as part of the economics team, we've been focusing a lot on stopping the bleeding. making sure we stabilize the patient, making sure that we still have an economy on which platform we can build the programs that are going to help people. People can say what they like, but although growth is not enough, it is necessary. This idea, this rhetoric that the Democratic Labour Party came around with because they had no economists and they didn't have a clue, so they had to sound like it didn't matter. But this notion that Barbados is not an economy, is a society, okay, yes, but you better get the economy part right. And there are certain necessary things that we have had to do and have to continue to do that are extremely, extremely important. But there's something that happens sometimes when you have to be so focused on fixing and looking at these economic indicators and making sure that the rest of the world does not count Barbados as a lost economy and a lost country. And that almost happened. Barbados almost became numbered among the failed states. And we would have ended up at a place in the history books that none of us would have wanted to be. But there's also something else. And it has to do with making sure that in the midst of these reforms that are necessary, that people do not slip through and slip away from us. And Kurt will know well what I'm talking about because of all of his years working on social policy. But the truth is that social policy and economic policy are not separate. They're not at all separate. And we need to always understand what is happening to people as a result of the policies that we come up with. And recently we've been talking as a government about making sure that we have that information, that we know what is going on with people. And one of the ways that we have to be able to do that, and we can do that, is to make sure that in our constituencies, we know what is happening with people. We know the people who may have been separated from the public service. We know the people who are vulnerable for certain reasons, and we can make sure that we can respond to them. So it's not just about what is happening in this community, but it's about how what is happening here helps inform what Kirk and I are doing and have to think about at the cabinet level and at the level of Parliament. Because those are things that we need to know, we need to understand. What we are doing is not about numbers. And I've spent 20 years as a development economist trying to get some of my colleagues to understand that. But it's not about numbers. It's about provisioning for and to people. And that is the business that we're in. And so, while we do our community activities have a broader scope and a broader objective. So for example, we had a road tennis tournament in British Hill recently. And I want to say I'm always heartened when young people step forward and say, listen, Ms. Galloway would like your support. We planning this thing, we doing this. We got you. And as Kurt says, we have to encourage that. Now, they might not come with a binder with pictures and well typed and everything presented. We may have to help them. But it was very encouraging for those two young men to come forward and say, and sir, it's very good to see you. Sir is from British Hill. To come forward and say, we want to do this for our community. And we had that road tennis tournament that it did extremely well. And next tournament, if Michael South does not yet know, I'm telling you that this is a joint tournament because we not set another tournament for St. Michael South people to come and win and carry on prize money. We all have some very good road tennis players, so we welcome the collaboration. But these are the kinds of things that give people a reason to get up, to practice, to come out in their constituency and socialize and circulate. And let me tell you something, when people are invested in their community and their surroundings, they're not doing any foolishness when the evening comes. They're not, because they paint those lines there on that court, they have to come out and practice, or their children have to come out and practice, and they do not want to see any foolishness going on in their community. And that is why this is important. This is not just about feeling good. This is about building that social capital and making sure that people feel invested in what is going on around them. But when the tournament was finished, I said to the young people and to some of the more experienced coaches, etc., that had helped us with it, I said, I am not in the business of just putting on tournaments. Because sometimes what happens is that, yeah, you put on a tournament and everybody will come out and try and win, which is what it's about. But I remember going to a tournament once, and it was not in South Central because we have very talented players in every discipline. But I remember going to a tournament once and watching the football, and it was not good football. The people complain. And you know why? There was no football club. There was nobody investing in those young men and women so that they could play some football, to make it entertaining to watch, to draw people out, and so that as they are playing at 18 and 19 and 25 and 27-year-olds, the 5 and 6-year-olds looking at them should be thinking, I want to play like that. But nobody wants to play like that. So we need to teach people the discipline of the sport. We need to teach people the discipline of getting up and looking good in your kit and taking pride in your uniform and representing well. That is a big part of what those young people will then transfer to everything else that they do. When we talk about a new national consciousness as part of our covenant of hope, as part of our manifesto, that is what we mean. We mean that no matter if you are a doctor, a welder, a grave digger, a teacher, that you have and feel pride in delivering the best service or good or necklace or bracelet that was made by RC in British Hill, this one. The best that you can deliver. So we did a successful road tennis tournament in British Hill, and we're going to do it again this year. But what we're going to do before that tournament starts is we're going to do a workshop, not a big long set of things, but we're going to do something that teaches some of the skills so that we can get greater participation and interest and so on. And we're going to do the same thing. We had a meeting about it just this morning. We sat down, we took the St. Michael South Central's local manifesto that we did as part of the election, we put it on the table, and we said, how are we going to deliver on these things? And so when we do our kite flying competition for Easter, we are not just going to encourage people to come out and fly a Spider-Man kite, that's plastic, but we are going to have, Kurt, you're planning to fly a Spider-Man kite, right? We're going to have, 2 weeks before, a couple of our master kite makers come out and sit down with some of our young people, and Donovan, you're coming to help make some kites, right? And show people how to make a kite. Remember when you used to be able to make a kite? Daddy, remember those days? My kites were always terrible, but don't tell nobody. That is important, to feel that you have created something that you can then show off. These seem like small things, but these are very, very important things. So we've done the road tennis tournament, and we've done, for example, our Tweedside Road Market. Our Tweedside Road Market was important for us as an activity because, you know, just as we have plans to develop our sport and cultural academy in the constituency that we continue to develop, we also have to make sure that people have access to real economic opportunities. And so at the macro level, the work that Kirk and I do every day is about that. It's about broadening people's choices, broadening people's opportunities. That is ultimately what we're here for. We want to make sure that at the local level, people see that they can grab onto something. That they don't feel as if they have to wait in the wilderness for a year or two to see that something is happening. And so we set up the Tweedside Road Market to be able to give people that opportunity. So if you have something that you make or something that you do, to come out and sell your goods or showcase your service, and we've been doing pretty well with it. But for us, that is a small part of what we want to establish as economic opportunities for the people of St. Michael South Central. Now, we started some of that through the Trust Loan Program. And I don't know if he would want me to talk about it. I don't see him here today. But we have a young man, Richard, who accessed one of the trust loans. And he was able to set up a business, a landscaping business. And I will say this too as a bit of an ad, because I think he's very good, and he represents that kind of work ethic and that kind of consciousness that we want to encourage in our communities. And so the Trust Loan Program, I want people to know when they look at Richard, when they see him on the road with his van or with his equipment going around to do landscaping jobs, I want people to see him and a few of the others who have accessed the loan and started their businesses and know that this Barbados Labour Party government is not about talk. It is not about talk, it is about real opportunity. And there are people, I think, who want to believe that it is about talk. I think there are some people who do. Because if you are able to say that, no, that's not real, I'm just talking, then you don't have to try. But when you have people like Richard and some others who are showing you that this thing has worked for them, well, then you have no excuse but to try. And I think the Trust Loan Program has a lot farther to go. I think that it's important that we underline the fact that it is called a trust loan because we trust you to repay. But not only that, that your neighbors and other people in your community trust you to repay because it is revolving. Because when you repay, you are putting money back in that other people can have access to, but you're also giving yourself an opportunity for a higher amount of money than what you first accessed to be able to reinvest in your business. And so that is an important part of delivering opportunities, economic opportunities to people that we have been promoting. Those of you who live in the Halls Road area would notice that we again had to clear the canal, and you know that canal area has been quite problematic for some time. And I remember canvassing over the last couple of years, and you know, constituents would call and complain about the mosquitoes and the rats and all kinds of things that the last government just allowed the place to get so popped down. And the truth is that the canal requires a permanent solution. Now, I call this area, and really most of South Central, is Greater Bridgetown area, right? And while we did clear the canal to give residents some temporary relief and to make the place look better, we need to have a permanent solution. People in Halls Road know better than anyone else that as soon as you clear the grass and the bush and everything, it comes back, right? So we have on our books to start this year a project that will develop a more permanent solution so that that side of Constitution River looks like the other side, which is over by the old Queen's College. But I think that we have to go beyond that. And certainly within this project, I am advocating for us to develop Halls Road as a proper commercial area for those people who want to establish their businesses there. If you pass there now, you will see that people have gone ahead and they've done what they got to do, what they feel they got to do. And I'm going to come in a minute to talk a little bit about the process for what they should do. because we have made a lot of effort to make that process easier for regular people. But when you pass there now, you can see that the fact that people have put up license plate shops, tinting shops, snacks, clothes, it means that there is interest in commercial activity. It means that people want to get up every morning and come and set themselves up and do their vending and feel legitimate, you know, and I mean, Carrboro Road is already a bustling commercial area. Now we want to regulate it a little bit and bring some, you know, make it also look nice, but not just look nice, but we also want those people to have good facilities. To not feel as if they have to go and find whatever they can find to put together, to put up, but to feel like they co-invest with the government of Barbados to put up something that they feel comfortable and proud to vend from. And so I said to the team this morning, and I know that this is going to come back, I don't want to say to haunt me, but it's going to come back as it should, that if there is nothing else, and there will be other things, but if there's nothing else that we are able to do in St. Michael South Central, we have to be able to establish and develop and invest collaboratively with the people who live here in adequate commercial spaces for people to live and work in their community. That is very much what I heard from the people of St. Michael South Central as I walked around and talked to them. And it is something that we, as the government of Barbados, and I, as your representative, am committing to deliver while I am here. Now, our plans and the way that we will facilitate this new development is not just to talk about it. We passed a new Planning and Development Act recently, last month, in January. And it replaces the old Town Planning Act, which was over 50 years old, I think 54 years old, right? That was done at a time when Barbados looked very different. It was run by people who looked very different and were very different. And we thought that in order to help manage the Barbados, the modern Barbados, that is built on economic enfranchisement and built on opportunity and built on what the vision that we have for our country, that we needed a new piece of legislation that would help develop that. But we also used that opportunity, and we felt it was an important opportunity to reorient government and how government does its work. Because in the past, the Town and Country Planning Department was like a regulator. It was like a big stick. You know, no was the answer, or yes. That was all. Often it was no. And the role of the Town and Country Planning Office as a regulator is important. There needs to be order and structure and predictability and rules for this kind of thing. Otherwise, chaos will take over. But at the same time, the Town and Country Planning Office was a source of frustration for people, and it's not to say that the officers in there do not work hard and are not very talented. They are. The first day I walked into the Town and Country Planning Office and I saw the work that they do. I mean, it's impressive, and they're impressive people, and they're very talented officers who take pride in their work. But they were held back by old legislation that did not serve us. And so one of the things that we said was, no, this has to be predictable. People need to know that they're going to get their approval or their refusal within 6 weeks if it's a simple application, or 16 weeks if it requires an environmental impact assessment, and we're going to make sure that we hold agencies to those timelines. That if I am the Town and Country Planning Office and I need to send something to Coastal to get a response, Coastal has 21 days to come back to me. And make sure that we tie timelines and we tie performance to every step of the process. And that's important not just because of bringing in this big investment that Kirk has tied me to bring it in. It's not just because we have to encourage investment and make sure that investors know that that Barbados is open for business. That's important, because I will tell you, over the last 9-10 months, the thing that I heard the most about why people did not bother to invest or why people took their money to St. Lucia or wherever, town planning was one of the top reasons, because it took too long. And it is not because of people's will or lack of will, it is that sometimes the systems keep us back. So the new town planning legislation has a provisional refusal clause in it. So that we tell you, okay, as you present this application, no, it can't go forward like this. But if you frame it like this, if you present it like this, if you do X, Y, Z, then we can give you, your refusal is no for now, but we can give you a conditional acceptance if you do these things. And really it is about having a conversation with the developer, with the investor, and saying, listen, we want you to develop, but we can't have Barbados looking your home. So you got to do it this way. It's not just for the investment. The truth is that one of the reasons that this was so important to me is that every single Barbadian at some point in their life is going to have to use town and country planning. And it is one of those nuisances in people's lives that make them lose the will to live. That you send in something and you don't know when you can see it back on the other side. And people who don't have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of money, don't have time. You're going to spend all your time working. And so, for me, the value to regular Barbadians is also that when you want to put up your kiosk in Martindale's Road or Horrells Road or wherever, you got to get permission. You have to get permission. But it is now easier to get that permission than it once was. The reason that people went ahead and did exactly whatever they wanted, and then you had to come down hard with enforcement and people got afraid of the idea of town planning, was that people would send in an application and not get an answer. But what we're saying to you now is, you have to get permission, but we have invested some time and energy in simplifying that process and making sure that when you do apply, that we are able to really facilitate instead of just telling you a yes or a no. I don't want to speak too much today. You know, when I get in front of South Central people, I like to talk long. But we want to have some time for questions, but I also wanted to get to another area of the investment climate, and it is the overall commitment that we've made as a Barbados Labour Party government to improve competitiveness, right? And that means something that is very real. One of the things that we found when we came in was that people did not trust government. And government, I don't mean any particular government, I mean the state. You know, it was almost frustrating at times to be associated with those last fellas. I found myself saying all the time, but we are not them. But there was an election on May 24th, you remember? But the truth is that as much as we say that, in people's minds, government is government, the state is the state, and we have to show that we are different. But what we got a lot of the time was, people had lost, investor confidence was shattered. People felt that doing business in Barbados was too difficult. We have something that is used the world over to look at competitiveness and how difficult it is to set up a company, to be able to do anything in a country. And one of those things, there are others, but one of those is the Doing Business Index. And Barbados kept falling and falling and falling. And it is one of the reasons that we worked on the Planning and Development Act. It is one of the reasons that we worked on the tax convergence, to have a predictable, standardized tax system so that whether you're international or previously considered an international company or domestic, you have a low rate of tax that is predictable and simple to administer. That is what competitiveness looks like. That is what improving competitiveness looks like. That is what productivity looks like. When you can take a list of indicators, a list of things that people have to do every day. How long does it take to get a construction permit? You can improve that number. How simple is it to, and predictable is it to pay your taxes? You can improve that number. That is what productivity really looks like. You would have seen in the paper recently a discussion about the National Productivity Council. And, you know, the poor Democratic Labour Party, they have to hold on to the smallest of things to quarrel about because they can't find anything to quarrel about. We found a lot to quarrel about. When we were on the campaign trail, man, we had our pick of things to quarrel about because we were grappling with an almost failed state. But you have seen a lot of rhetoric in the last couple of days about the National Productivity Council and this notion of productivity. And I have always felt as a practitioner, as an economist, that productivity and measuring it is not some kind of abstract idea that you sit down in a room and with a calculator and you try and come up with all of these different measures of productivity that you can then write in a paper and put on a shelf. Productivity, competitiveness, is about making sure that when people want to invest in your country, when people want to set up a business, when people want to get things done, they can do it easily. That you have a product, whether it is a tourism service or a financial service or whatever it is, that is presented in a way that people want at a price that people can afford. That is competitiveness, that is productivity. Now, as part of the effort to modernize government, and it's not something that somebody asked us to do. When we came in, we realized that the public sector had to be lean, fit for purpose, and ready to deliver in ways that it has never delivered before. We came in to arrest a situation of extreme and profound institutional decay. People did not trust the government. I don't care who you were. Kirk and I used to take it personally. Sometimes I have to remind ourselves, we used to say, but that's not us. We've done no such thing ever. But that is the association people had with politicians and with government and with the public service. And we had to make sure that we changed that narrative because Barbados was not going to move forward unless we changed that narrative. The IMF did not ask us to do it. Nobody asked us to do it. This is something that as part of our visioning from the days of coming up with the Covenant of Hope to the manifesto throughout, we knew that it was going to be a hard thing to do, a bitter pill to swallow, but we would have to do it. And so what did we do? We didn't sit down in a room. We didn't go up at somebody's house and say, fill up and drink a whiskey and figure out what to do. We asked the people of Barbados, tell us what you want your public service to look like. We asked the social partnership, tell us what you want your partners in government to look like. What did they say? We created a framework. Tell us what you think in terms of these entities. Tell us what you think is essential. Tell us what you think is highly desirable. Tell us what you think is optional. We're bound for it. And they did that. We had a survey that was completed by over 5,000 people. As a percentage of the population, those numbers are unprecedented. You know how hard it is, well, Kurt, you know how hard it is to get people to fill out a survey. Barbadians responded because you know what? They thought, yes, we want a public service that is fit for purpose. So when it came to the National Productivity Council, and I mean, we looked through, we looked at how could we deliver these things if we determine that they were necessary, how can we deliver these things in ways that make sense? Among the social partners, and I'm going to speak slowly because it's got some people that play that can't understand. Among the social partners, 0% said that the Productivity Council was essential. 0%. 28% said it was highly desirable, and 73% considered it optional. Among the nation, Barbadian people, 12.8% said it was essential. 22.8% said it was highly desirable, meaning it is a nice to have. 64.4% said it was optional. Now, this is not about the officers and the very talented people who sit in the National Productivity Council. It is not about the very, very talented people who sat in the National Initiative for Service Excellence. It is not about those people. It is about the fact that we needed to get more honest and more practical about what we mean when we talk about delivering on competitiveness, delivering on productivity. I am a woman of practical affairs. Those entities, agreed, sit in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment. And so what did we have to think about? We had to think about what is it that we have to deliver when it comes to competitiveness. We have to make things work better, not measure them. Measuring alone is not going to get us there. Now, yes, it's true, we have to know how we're performing, but we need to act. So, we developed the new legislation for town and country planning. We did the work on tax, and there's a lot more reform. We're working on CIPO, Corporate Affairs Registry, and other registries, making sure that these things are not black holes that people feel that they go in and they lose their documents, they lose their, they feel as if nothing comes out on the other side. Now, we have said, and I will always say this, and people must be tired of hearing me say this, we cannot save every job. But we are going to make sure that we stay committed to every Barbadian, to their right to work, and to their right to have economic opportunities. So what you are hearing right now is a bunch of political rhetoric. And we have to find, one of the things that we are working hard in the Ministry of Economic Affairs on is making sure that we find the systems and the mechanisms where people can have economic opportunities. The structure of work is going to look different. This is 2019. So you may not be sitting in an office in government and coming in at 8:30 and going home at 4:30. That may not be what work looks like now. But you may be able to sell your services as part of a company or as an individual to the government of Barbados in a new framework for what work is and what economic opportunity now looks like. One of the things I say to the guys in South Central all the time, start a business, start a company, register, get a TIN number, and come and tell us that your company is registered. So that when we have work in the area, when we have economic activity in the area, as we will have certainly through, for example, the Tourism Investment Forum that we are having here on the 24th of April, where we have an entire plan for how we want to see Bridgetown and Greater Bridgetown and the entire urban corridor revisioned and repackaged for investment. A lot of that activity is happening in this area. People from the Bayland and Britain's Hill and Carrington Village and the surrounding areas will have economic opportunity. Gone are the days when you have to go and work for somebody. That doesn't mean that you're not going to work. Same for the officers in the Productivity Council who have developed years of important experience, but the fact is that gone are the days too when you sit down and are not accountable for the people of Barbados for you're the line in the estimates that pays for office furniture and pays for this and pays for that. It is a different dispensation. It is a different dispensation that was occasioned by the last lost decade of the Democratic Labour Party. But it is also occasioned by the fact that we have to change the narrative about what the public service is. We have to be truly competitive and not just sit down and scratch our heads and try to measure it. So, yes, the National Productivity Council is one of the entities that we said from last year as a result of the survey was going to be rationalized. The narrative about how it was a shock. But in order to get news, you've got to go to work. And I'm going to leave that there without saying to whom I refer. So that narrative about how it was a shock and people were not ready, you know, this thing has not been easy. And the Prime Minister, as a woman who will always roll up her sleeves and lead from the front and take whatever is coming her way in the way of criticism or feedback, was the first one to say, you know, this process has not gone the way that we wanted it to go. But we are committed to making sure that people do not fall through and fall away. We will make sure that people, through the Household Mitigation Unit, through our digitization and modernization project, through whatever it is that we are doing, that people continue to have opportunities. And so I had to set that record straight. Because we have an agenda as this Barbados Labour Party government. We have work to do. The work that we are doing on attracting investment, it is not just because we can. It is not just because we want to see new hotels and more tourists. It is because we consider this a way to expand people's choices and to improve their opportunities. That is why Kurt and I got up from what we were doing and came to seek the support of the people of St. Michael South Central and of the people of St. Michael South. For us, that is what it is about. We are not the other fellows. We came here to deliver. And it is not going to be easy. It has not been easy, and we are not finished. But we've been able to reduce debt to GDP, if you count all the arrears that they allow to build up, from 170% to 127% in 9 months. We've been able to get rid of the deficit that they were just rolling over, and that was their new normal. And we don't say that because it sounds good to say, but that matters. Because people would not touch Barbados with a 40-foot pole in the past. And now we are in the position of having to manage conversations and potential investors and make sure that we have the incentive regime right, make sure that we have the doing business environment right for all of those people who suddenly, somehow, from May 25th, decided that they were ready to invest in Barbados again. I wonder why. So as I close, I want to continue the theme of Kurt's remarks and to say, stay with us. Stay with us as your Barbados Labour Party government, but also stay with your communities. You know, we keep saying that we are committed to bringing everyone along, but I want us all as a branch, as a Barbados Labour Party, in our different spheres of influence, to bring everyone along, to bring our neighbours along, to know when people are challenged, to know when we may have to make an intervention and help people manage until they can manage a little bit better on their own. So stay the course with us. We are committed to you, and we thank you for remaining committed to us.
Thank you, Minister Cattle, for, as usual, causing us to pause and reflect on the challenging environment that we inherited and also the fact that we can now have confidence in our government again, and that hope you can feel as you walk the length and breadth of this country. The ministers are going to take a few questions from comrades, so I will invite you to project your voice, and they will be happy to answer a few questions. The floor is now open. Thank you. Wow. It is because the presentations were so complete and fulsome. You want to come? Sure, go ahead.
It's not really a question. Good night, everybody. I'm from Miracle Consistency. It's not really a question. It's a statement I want to make. Oh. The busiest road in Barbados is in your constituency, Carrboro Road. It needs resurfacing. I hope it's on the carriers. And I hope it's on the carriers. Yeah. All right.
I'm short, so I gotta step up on this. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Desiree Selby, and I live in Belleville. Since before the election, a curb has fallen into the gutter. I have called MTW about no less than 10 times, and up till today, the gutter is now totally blocked. Grass is growing in it, mosquitoes are breeding, and nobody has done anything about it. That is one. Two, I want to know from the government, we are banning single-use plastics on the 1st of April. I want to know if anywhere in that plan or legislation there are going to be finding people for littering. Okay?
Yes, good evening. I don't have any problems with the government economic policy. It's working. I have no problem with the government economic policy. I know it's working well and working well. I know that as a person who is invested in politics and world affairs. I want to say I have a little thing with Kurt here about a matter. Yeah, you said Kurt, my friend Kurt, you said that you must upset young people. I agree. But this is not nothing new. At 23 years old, I was president of the Assembly branch. And I got help from people in here. This branch. My friend Barton, with 30 years, and his wife was there, Maggie to the back, we were people about here. I was 23 years. I know that I went to the National Council of this party at a young age too. And I can call things that happen to people benefit on the road. Today, I did and write articles to the National Council, and it happened. That thing program with the people that try to science in schools. I did that, and the government pushed it forward and went forward. In my very department working, when Mr. Adams in 19something had a problem with getting money from that department, and he sent home the inspectorate, some of it. I went to the National Council that night, and I used to talk about it. I put forward the case. And Mr. Adams said, Mr. Williams, you were doing pretty well. I'm going to make sure it happen. Today, the same public health inspectorate assistants went to community college and they got the associate degree. You understand? But what happens in that manner, what Kurt is saying, there's a lot of petty jealousy about people. And some people call, you go to Harrison College and I didn't write, or I went to Harrison College, I wasn't a person with PhD or master's, that you shouldn't say nothing. That's not what I came to political party to do. I came to speak what we see happen, okay? I don't mind that. So I'm saying that it's nothing new. My last moment here, I'm not happy about CBC and history of Granny Adams. I see all kinds of, what is the purpose at CBC and also, but I don't keep it there, I'm saying what I'm saying. What is the purpose of CBC and the government information services, what Curtin Marsh is saying is actually put on that plate and spoken about. We need not to come here every Friday, every Sunday and speak about, my last point, and speak about, this is where the problem happens, and speak about people, and speak about, we need to get here people's views from site to help baffle what's going on. And I say that with no relay.
Thanks, Mohammed. All right. So the first question that has to do with Carrboro Road. Now, that was actually one of the roads that was submitted under the IDB road development program. So that was one of the roads that MTW had as one of the roads, because that was one of the roads that, in addition to Flagstaff, we knew had to be worked on. The reason it has not yet started is that there is another development effort that is going on in that area. So because of what they're doing, they have planned for development of a site over by the CXC building. It means that the pattern of traffic and everything is going to change. It doesn't make sense repaving the road and then coming back to dig it up in order to develop it later. So when all of that work is being done, that is when that road is going to be repaved. Desiree, I wish you had called me and told me about your problems with MTW. But I mean, those are issues that, right? But I am your representative. Ta-da! I am not like the guy from the last 15 years. I answer the phone. Right. So we've taken note of that, Simone and the Wonder Crew, and we are going to make that representation to MTW. I am going to let Kurt respond to the plastics issue. And of course, we're going to hang around for some refreshments after. So after Kurt responds and Natasha gives a vote of thanks, anybody else that has any other questions, I'll be around at the back and we can talk at that time.
I knew somebody was going to ask me about the plastic thing. But to answer the question, I mean, as honestly and as succinctly as possible, we decided, Barbados determined it was going to ban, the government of Barbados, single-use plastics on April 1st, 2019. We gave an extension for plastic bags until January 1st, 2020. I must tell you now that I don't use those regular plastic bags in my house, and it's making my life very difficult because we get so used to putting everything in a bag and throwing the bag outside. It's becoming difficult, but it is necessary. And one of the reasons we determined we wanted to ban the plastic bags was because of the impact on the environment. A significant portion of the bags you see, single-use plastic you see, ends up in the sea. And a significant portion of that ends up in the fish. And we eat the fish. So a lot of us are actually consuming a lot of this petrol-based plastic. And so we are doing this in the long term for you. And we want to protect the environment that we live in. I am told that on average, Barbadians use 3 to 4 plastic bags in a household a day. There are 90,000 households or so. We just need to do the math. We're talking about a significant amount of plastic bags that we need to do without. And when we had the recent flooding and we were cleaning the drains, we took out a lot of plastic bags, styrofoam, single-use cups. Because those things, bottles, those things, if you throw a plastic bag in the gutter, you may get rid of it, but it stays there for years, centuries, and centuries. So we want something that even if it ends up there, it will go back to an organic state. So if you want to use a plastic bag in the future, it's going to have to be a bio-based bag that when you're done with it, it returns to an organic state, it doesn't harm the environment. That said, and to answer your question, it does not mean that we are saying people then throw these bags or these single-use plastics willy-nilly into the street, into the gutters. That's not what we want. And but there are two things we did. Cabinet has already approved the expansion of the Returnable Containers Act. What that means is that when you take back a plastic bottle now, you get, I think, 10 cents for those bottles. So you never see those bottles. After effect, you see people taking up those bottles because they could get money for them. By expanding the Returnable Containers Act to include almost all plastic bottles, it means you're not going to see regular bottles on the street either, because you'll be able to get something for those bottles. That's the first thing we want to do, is to take the bottles off the street. I'm coming to you now. And then, so we extended the expansion of the Returnable Containers Act. Exactly what's going to be in it isn't finalized, but it's going to be a lot more than what's there now. Probably including the same shampoo bottles. And a lot of shampoos that we use actually contain microbeads, which are very damaging too, but that's another conversation. But Minister Prescott, you will see very soon, is going to be bringing to Cabinet and to the country legislation to talk about the separation of garbage. So that we're going to be asking Barbadians to separate their garbage, so that the plastic ban would make sense. You know, you separate your garbage, you take out the plastics and the organic garbage. And as part of the legislation I am bringing on the plastics, the fines are very, very, very stiff for people who want to continue using those single-use plastics. So there are going to be fines for using these single-use plastics. In the legislation Minister Prescott will bring, there are going to be fines that are strict and serious for littering. So we're moving away from all of it. We're looking at it from every angle, but we're trying to stop Barbadians from damaging the environment, basically. It's not going to be easy, you know, it's not going to be a rose garden, but it is going to be done. Thank you.
Comrades, thank you for your questions and for being engaged audience this afternoon. We've come to the time of the evening for the vote of thanks, and an event like this could not be put on without the assistance of an amazingly committed and dedicated set of persons and comrades who are always willing to go above and beyond to do their best to ensure that our events in St. Michael South Central are a success. So I will now invite our floor member, Jocelyn Brathwaite, to give the vote of thanks.